Voices from the ghetto, crying, Lord, crying, crying. Voices from the ghetto. We are not a forgotten people. Hear our prayer. With dented pride, they soldier on. Revolutions, fake politicians born. And often their tragic story brings a journalist glory. No wonder they view the world with scorn. From since the day they're born, some call them rebels without a cause. These social victims of unjust laws, but yet they christen the heroes, renegades, desperados, forever knocking on heaven's doors. Hear me? Steel band music shatters the silence, harmony to conquer the violence. Big men run when cops approach, fighting for scraps with the cockroach. Young Turks, they're turf protecting, almost every young girl expecting. So tomorrow begs to no borrow, there'll be another voice from the ghetto. Crying, Lord, crying, crying, voices from the ghetto, crying. Come, mama, come, papa, voices from the ghetto.
Yes, indeed, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web, a pleasant good night to you. This is the Corridor Transformation, the Tuesday edition. Of course, I just arrived from Tobago, pulled up in front of the building with my car. I had to rush, of course, to get the program going. Yes, I want to thank, of course, Silver Fox, who I have not met, but of course we spoke profusely whilst I was in Tobago, intermittently from time, in order, of course, to probably give him an update as to why and what I'm doing in Tobago. I want to thank, of course, at least the advisory secretariat to the Tobago Chief Secretary for accommodating me at such short notice and untimely, I would say unslated, registered. Yes, indeed, of course. I'm just saying that it was by sheer serendipity, and the fact of the matter is that they accommodated me. I am very, very grateful, and of course the discussion I will not share with you, except to say that Tobago may well see me a bit more often, let me put it that way. Once, of course, what I have proposed will take some kind of root or consideration by the Chief Secretary's people, let me put it that way, and their operatives. But that being as it may, of course, let's go straight. Of course, as I say, progress is a high price game, and we must, of course, look at it very seriously. Of course, Joshua is not with me tonight. He has some other things to do, but some of the things I want to share tonight, I think I would want, of course, most of the time so to do. I want to say, of course, that let me reiterate what I said last night, and that is that we are going to have some new programs set up, yes, on the corridor transformation, but of course on the transformation platform, I should say, more appropriately. Corridor transformation platform more appropriately, but it will be dealing with, of course, looking at the ghetto and looking at talent and potential, but along the academic field, because people have a sense of feeling good about themselves when they pass an exam, when they would have been subjected to some national exam. In this case, of course, we will be targeting both the adults as well as the young people who may or may not be in school. And I think that a brain is a sad thing to lose. And I think that is the philosophical underpinning of pursuing this particular initiative. I'm looking at the monitor and I'm seeing, you know, the whiteness again, even though my screen is showing the what I consider to be the appropriate color. So I don't know what is responsible for that. Let me make a further adjustment and see if it can be adjusted. Let me just do something again here and see what has happened. I'll take off the lights. They say it's too much light. Let me see what will happen now. What will happen now? I'll give it a little moment because, you know, there is a delay. Having, of course, created the image and then to upload it to YouTube and then for it to come to you and I through, of course, this third-party setup will take a little while. But let's see if it changes the background and, of course, some of the coloration that I am seeing on the screen that is different from what is coming on YouTube. There may be, as I said, we are using the secondary camera. I'm yet to of course, reconfigure the original camera. I want to thank, of course, our good friend in the United States for sending that camera to me, and it worked well up to the point when, of course, I am maybe I did something that ought not to be done. So I have to cry back to Cyrus. Cyrus, if you are listening, if you are watching, well, I'll be coming to you with that and some other things that I've noticed with the system so that we can get, of course, the best quality possible. That being as it may, let me say that once again I want to introduce, and of course, in essence, we will be extrapolating some of the information delivered by the Honorable Prime Minister at the United Nations, and then we will make some comparisons as well as, of course, make some analysis as to whether or not Trinidad and Tobago is in a better place. And I want to say up front that Trinidad and Tobago is in fact in a better place. I also want, of course, to draw to your attention, I thought I would have had it on screen, but since I don't have it, because I just came back from Tobago, as I said, yes, I've been there whole day, 6 o'clock this morning, no, not 6 o'clock, 4 o'clock this morning at the port, and then, of course, the boat reached up the Boko Reef. We went on, reached up to Tobago about 10 o'clock, and then we had some engagements that took us about 3 hours, and then, of course, to get to the Chief Secretary's office at that THA complex. And then, of course, we had to, at the same time, we had to sort of leave someone at one of the banks, First Citizen Bank, then go back for her, and then, of course, by that time it was about 3:30. The boat is leaving in the evening time for 4 o'clock. Understand the whirlwind nature of the exercise today. And then, of course, one of the persons, because I carried 2 persons with me, said that they will stay up because they had something to do with respect to a housing matter in Tobago, and I went to the Chief Secretary to advocate on that. Yeah, wherever I believe that my services could be accessed or my services is needed, yeah, I normally would go, particularly if I assess that it is really something important. So something as important as housing, even if it's in Tobago or Trinidad, I would be attracted to that, especially when the person comes with an argument that, of course, is very painful to ignore. Let me put it that way. So the gentleman remained in Tobago, a good thing because we didn't have time. We couldn't even get a bite, something to eat. We had to come back to Trinidad to get a box of fast food, let me put it that way. And but on the boat, of course, we did get some victuals, something to eat, but of course I only wanted things to drink, so I two mortars were bought for me, and that is what I used to sustain myself up to now. I have not eaten anything for the day as yet, except, of course, to drink those 2 motor, and incidentally they had them in tins on the boat. I custom with the one in bottles, you know, around here, all the bars and so on will have them in bottles. So I've given you a sufficient description as to how my day was, and then of course they get back here, and then of course put on the system in order to boost it up, and at the same time, of course, deliver this information to you. But I thought it was important to do so. I say this THIS, this information, not DIS, not disinformation, because we don't deal with disinformation on this program. We deal with factual information, we deal with pragmatism, and we deal with, of course, information that its veracity cannot be questioned. That being as it may, I want to, as I said, I want to share, of course, Joshua's letter, the letter that Joshua got from, of course, the president. I think it is important, once again, of course, but I will read it on this occasion, just to, of course, give people an appreciation of what that little people can do big things. Just as how this little box, 50 pounds, they say. I'm talking about the content, the brain matter, the tissue matter, the brain, made up of course, electrons and all kinds of different neurons, yes, that makes it function and, of course, make you think. Well, and from it, big things can happen. Large cities like New York, and of course, prior to that, we talk about the Romans and the grandiose edifices and all kinds of different inventions, and that continues to today. So, of course, little Joshua, 10 years of age, sent a letter to the president, yes, as any one of you can, and of course, especially if it comes from the ghetto or the underprivileged, some say, or the poor community, the president belongs to you too. And therefore, you can write it to the president. Yes, of course, always in a dignified tone and in a manner that will attract, of course, a response. So the response to Joshua's letter, I'm going to read the response once again. He is, well, this was on the 29th, so two days ago, and Master Joshua Smith, that is what the writer for and on behalf of the president, because the president has asked one of her executive advisors, Ken Jardine, to write in response to Joshua's letter to her, inviting her to his school, and of course to visit the community of George Street, Nelson Street, Charlotte Street. Yes, you hear the streets that are well known to the metropolitan countries, tourists, investors, and so on, but in a negative way. The advisory say, don't come to Trinidad, but if you come to Trinidad, don't go to Nelson Street and so on. And here it is, a young man from Nelson Street and environs is writing to the president, and this is what the response is. Dear Joshua, Her Excellency the President has asked me to answer the very nice letter you sent to her earlier this month, inviting her to visit your school, Eastern Boys Government Primary. Her Excellency wants to thank you for your lovely letter and your gracious invitation to visit Eastern Boys. I am sure you realize that there are people like you in many schools in Trinidad and Tobago who also want the same thing. Since Her Excellency is president of the entire country, she has to go from one district to another so that schools all over the country are included. All right, so there are others from different parts of the country that write to her, I assume, and that, of course, he is explaining the predicament, the schedule, the tough schedule of the president. So it goes on. And he says on behalf of the president, she has to go from one district to another so that schools all over the country are included. While the schools she will visit are already settled, meaning that there is a schedule already for this term, she will certainly consider Eastern Boys as a possibility in the new year. In the meanwhile, she wants to encourage you to do well in your new school, continue to be positive about your community, and work together with your dad to make East Port of Spain a better place. Her Excellency sends her best wishes to you, your family, and your school. These are powerful, emotive, selected words, you know. You don't make joke with that. It's the president of the country that is expressing through, of course, this, what I consider to be this author. And then, of course, sincerely, Ken Jardine, Executive Advisor, Office of the President. Right, a letterhead coming. Letterhead itself is from the President's office. Very, 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 very significant. Let me just read 2 paragraphs as to Joshua's original letter. And it says, Monday, notice when we spoke, some of the students didn't know that you addressed the President with the title Excellency. You address the Prime Minister as Honorable, or any minister as Honorable. Yeah. And you also, of course, address ambassadors and emissaries and representatives from different countries here in Trinidad as Excellency as well. Right? Of course, in the courts, there you don't say Excellency, and so you say Your Honor. Right? So these little issues that is of standard in terms of addressing dignitaries and persons who have high standing and quality in the society. It will be significant for young people to know that, and therefore will know how to address people. So, Her Excellency, of course, Mrs. Christine Kala Kangaloo, ORTT, and we have been repeatedly saying, both Joshua and Maya, yes, that ORTT means Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. By now, every one of you out there should know. I'm talking about the young folks, and if you didn't know before as older folk, well, this is your opportunity to commit it to memory. Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Incidentally, the highest award anybody in Trinidad could get. And of course, I want to say congratulations to Selwyn Kojo for his for that honor being bestowed upon him in commemoration of our Republic Day. All right, the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago was given to him. Two others, as I said, I didn't commit them to memory, but that being as it may, congratulations to all of them. Office of the President, the President's House, Queen's Park, Savannah, Port of Spain. Subject, invitation to visit my school, Eastern Boys Government. Dear Her Excellency, my name is Joshua Smith. I am 10 years of age and live in the community of George and Nelson Streets, which people say is very bad. To be truthful, police visit and rough people up, especially young people, regularly. We are seen as a poor community, while the area has ugly buildings homeless people roam the streets day and the night. I see that the background has darkness. Let me see. There, in my haste tonight, maybe I would have done some things that. So let's see if we can get that back. Right. Okay. So we have gotten it back. Yeah. Yes. Let me just read the second paragraph. Right. Excellency, parents have to warn their children of the dangers of the streets because of drug pushers and drug takers. Violence and bullying is something that we all know very well. I know that this is bad and I do not practice bullying. Like all the good parents in the community, we are told over and over that violence and bullying are not good. So yeah, he has two more paragraphs here, which probably I'll read the entire thing on the next occasion. But I want to make the comparison with, of course, the introductory paragraph of the response from the President. And it says, Her Excellency, the President has asked me to answer the very nice letter you sent to her earlier this month. I think that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes. Very nice letter. And of course you too. But that being as it may, let me say that it is worth reiterating, worth repeating at this point in time of some of the programs that we want to unleash, we want to get off the ground before the end of the year. And in keeping with our commitment to making certain that the people along the east-west corridor that this program serves are people too. They must not be second-class and third-class citizens. And the best way to do that, as the Prime Minister has said repeatedly in opposition and in office, in government, that education, of course, plugs people out of poverty. Takes people out of poverty. It's a fact. You may not see it now. Those are the people who are engaged now in secondary school, in primary school, in kindergarten, in of course the early child care centers, etc. But education does. By the time you reach, let's say, tertiary, you would realize it for sure as to a career path that you would like to take. And it doesn't mean that at tertiary level that you're talking academic alone. It could be that you want to be some kind of engineer, and therefore, of course, vocational skills as well, supporting, of course, that journey to excellence and to where you would like to be as an adult. Because just as how you have to journey from childhood, infancy, then of course you move on to puberty, they say, in your teens, etc. And then to adulthood. In this case, of course, we have defined an adult to be 18 years and over. But there are other biological indicators to show that a person is an adult. Like take, for instance, when, of course, the menstrual period starts, and when boys start to, of course, have wet dreams, etc. All of that things determined. In other words, when you have the capacity to, of course, contribute to bringing forth a new human being on earth. In other words, when you have the capacity because of your biological development to, of course, copulate and produce a child. Right? So there are that does not mean, in other words, that you have to be 18 and above to do that. Notice that you can do it, of course, at an earlier age. And some people say that those are the age of maturity as well. Whether you have it in that context or in another context or in those areas that I've just enunciated, well, no problem. But the fact is that legally is 18 years. So you are responsible for your conduct at every level from age 18. Of course, below that, the law has a little bit of leniency because the understanding is, the principle is that children will make mistakes, and even though a child does or do a particular act, that if an adult did it, 18 years and over, would be subjected to the full brunt of the criminal justice system. No such, generally speaking, action or consideration will be taken for someone that is below. Of course, there is, of course, some penalties that they will have to pay as well. Notice these days, they put police officers in schools. And already I think there is a case where a child was charged for possession of marijuana for the purposes of trafficking. That's a very dangerous charge. But the courts are obliged, they are obligated to look at the child's age and see whether or not that child could be rehabilitated, one, and two, that the stigma of a conviction does not carry on into adult life at the age of 18 and above. So I know that whilst the charge may sound, should I say, for some optimistic, because they want to get rid of all of the bad seeds or apples in the schools, but the courts will not, it is obligated, will not see it in that light. All right? And of course, as I've always said, if it was you and your child, and he or she would have made a mistake like that, you would want some leniency as well. It does not waste time. As the old saying goes, blood is thicker than water. In the meantime, of course, you can make your calls. I have no difficulty. Joshua will not be with us tonight. 337-6940, 337-6940, as we, of course, unveil some of the initiatives that we would want to engage in. Because let's face it, I heard some asinine story that is nestled in pure fantasy and maybe subconscious, what I consider to be vindictiveness. Subconscious vindictiveness, or subconscious hatred, or subconscious just pessimism. Subconscious pessimism. I think that's the correct word. Pessimism. You see, I heard some people said that Love and Smith didn't get anything from the government because he wasn't authorized to do certain things. What is certain things? The only thing they could be referring to is the fact that we created, of course, the only empowerment and resource center with with a employment agency built in. And to date, of course, our database is overwhelmed with over 1,000 persons and counting. Are you saying that somebody had to authorize me or even you to do that on behalf of the community? When you take this narrow and, of course, uninformed position, you're not doing yourself or the community justice. If you are taken seriously, a person may well say, well, listen, boy, I'm looking for something from the government, so I'm not going and do that. No, the antithesis of that is very simple. The government, naturally, any government will want to applaud behavior like that, not you having an ability to bring a program like this, for example, on air, and somebody says that Smith doing things that was not authorized. No, that is foolish. That is stupid. I will do things, and I'm talking in a personal capacity, I will do things in spite of talk like that. Not because of it, but in spite of talks like that. Because I know, because there are people out there who don't know that the opportunity exists, that they can live a better life, that if with good guidance and motivation and the inculcation of what is called self-esteem to the point where they feel good about themselves, and they believe that they could move mountains as a consequence, and you have a mechanism or an institution that facilitates that kind of encouragement. Any government that refuses that, or any government that feels that somebody is usurping their authority, you draw your own conclusion. Because clearly, they don't want assistance if they are thinking like that. But you cannot be bothered because there are people out there, young people, middle-aged people, senior citizens, who need the guidance. There's some people who simply born into poverty, believe poverty is their destiny, and will, of course, live it out, practicalize it, manifest it. And if you have an institution like this saying, no, that is not your destiny. You may be born of a family, you have no choice, that may be defined as poor, but you have a duty to emerge out of that with a certain kind of vision, a certain kind of attitude, a certain kind of disposition in order to make your own family reach or graduate to a standard that you, or put another way, that where you were born would seem as a distant memory, a distant past, as you progress one generation at a time and incrementally. That's what we are talking about here. And I know very few people like that. Which, and any part of the country, tell me that you have a program like this. Whether government minister, whether it be persons who would have been appointed as board members, etc., by the government, by the state. Which? So I am convinced that in spite of what I consider to be the recalcitrance, in spite of the pessimism, there is need for work like this. Otherwise, you will have to tell Serval and them and Field and them, stop working too. And even the presence of these people have not been able to solve the problem. So in other words, all must be on board. And any government will have to have no choice but to appreciate what these people are doing voluntarily. In my case, I see it as spontaneously, because I've always asked myself, Lennox, what you doing this for? You can easily, I remember very distinctly my lawyer friends. At one time, I was studying law. I ended up, of course, being a criminologist, and of course, before that, a teacher. But the fact of the matter is that, listen, I used to go every weekend in Hilton, with my lawyer friend and friends. And at one day I said, but listen, I am from Laventille. Passley Street, Laventille. These fellas make it, and therefore that is where they choose to be. And I know that I can't even say very few are trying to find a word just beyond nobody from Laventille. I try to find a word where you still have a sprinkling of person, but so as to make it sound nice. But virtually nobody from Laventille, East Port of Spain, Beetham Silats, would be found at Hilton every Friday. Let's face it. And I know that. But I grew up there. I was telling somebody today, a young man that is now a police officer. I used to give free lessons at the Lisol's Village Council's building in Passley Street. And then he came to me and said, Mr. Smith, pretty young lad at the time, and he said, Mr. Smith, I really would like you to help me because I want to advance myself. And then I looked at him, and I gave him a test that he doesn't even know up to now. Yes, Sergeant, I think you wouldn't mind if I say Sergeant. Not Sergeant as a policeman. His title is actually Sergeant, right? So he would know what I'm talking about. And communicate with me. I would love to hear where you are today, after all these years. But the point I'm making is that here it is, he said, and I can't read properly and I can't write properly and so on. And after, of course, I confirmed that what he was saying is so. But what is significant is that he was able to bear himself. Say, listen, Mr. Smith, these are my deficiencies. I would love to be able to conquer that and get some kind of qualification so that I can make something better of myself and maybe pull my family out of what I consider to be poverty quagmire or the poverty cycle. That's all right, no problem. Come up. The center was poised on a hill. Today is, of course, it's a decrepit shell. The young people and those after I left, did not keep up the maintenance, if you want to call that, or the Ministry of Community Development did not put that particular facility on its list for repairs and or rebuilding. But that is a different story. But the point is that we were there on weekends, during the week and so on. When I finish teaching, I go up there and I give him a special class. And I told him that, listen, we have a target, You have to do 2 subjects. I think it was history and English, I believe it was. Sergeant, you could call me and tell me which one it was, if it was any of them at all. But I knew I was teaching there English, commerce, history, human and social biology. Not maths. I don't teach maths as such. Because I know how challenging it is, and I want people to first, if you could pass 2 or 3 subjects, then maths will become easy, because if I could pass that, if I could reach that level, I could reach maths level at that stage as well. So it is a motivation really at the same time to focus on maths. But you want to get the low-hanging fruit first. And of course we worked. His handwriting improved. His conversational exercises improved. He was, of course, doing paper after paper so as to prepare himself for the eventual exam. And eventually he passed. Then he went into the police service. And, of course, the rest is now history. Yes, Sergeant, I've given everybody your that experience. And there's something, too, that we must avoid. You see, if somebody did something for you or some circumstance that impacted on your life personally, I'm not saying that it is about misplaced fame and credit, but it must always be done in the context. And you hear most academics and the persons who would have made it say it in that vein. So therefore, you should not be ashamed to say, I went MLIO or I'm from Laventille. Yeah, there is a clang you're hearing in the background that is creating that dark situation, but it will return. So I saw it return earlier, so I hope that it doesn't do it permanently. And of course, it tells me that we may have to finish this program earlier than normal. But the point I am making is that when these people, when you hear Rowley talk, for example, where he came from, when you hear Kamala Prasad Bisesa, the Prime Minister, current Prime Minister, and many other persons who have national significance and playing roles, whether in the past or present, or in the, and when I say past here, I'm talking about distant past and immediate past. But the fact is that they will give you these anecdotes, these stories, and whether or not it may be for selfish reasons, and I am saying that I will not focus, and nobody could convince me to say that they say it for selfish reasons, even though that exists. What they do it for is to motivate others, that you could do the same thing like me. I prefer to leave it there. There are some, of course, who are arrogant and contemptuous and so on, and say, well, listen, a fella like Heinz, for example, look, I passed, I think, 3 CXC subjects when CXC wasn't even around. He passed 3 CXC subjects. At the time when he did the exam, he was talking GC, of course. But I'm just making the point. Saying it for arrogance to an audience or in an audience or in a community where there is a sore lacking of what I consider to be motivators, a sore lacking of exemplars. It is important that you craft those who would have made it, that you craft it and always to demonstrate that you could do it too. It must not be that look at me today, but you can't get there. No, that is misplaced motivation. That is demotivation, because a person taking on that seriously is saying that you are up there, having, of course, come through a process that I may be now going through, but how you present it is as if I can't make it, so let me remain in my little cocoon. I said that is wrong. So, in my case, for example, I not only speak it, I live it. Remember last night when Umbala, again, misplaced what I consider to be, is it sympathy? Misplaced accolades? I don't know. But when he told me in an interview at one of the radio stations that he was attached to, and said that Pantin walk the streets of Laventille, that is why he is so successful. And that is why he was getting, of course, funding. And I had to retort by telling him, listen, well, if he walk Laventil and he get in that, having regard to the fact that we're doing the same work, because we are focusing on those young people who, if you don't make an intervention, find themselves, of course, holding a gun in bad company, etc. And I say, well, I just sleep there. It means, therefore, if his rationale, if his logic has any veracity, has any legitimacy, then obviously I should be showered with all kinds of support from the private sector, the public sector, and beyond. But it was not that. And I had to give him it in such a way that he suddenly opened his eyes. But I said, I just sleep there. So notice the conversation stopped one time, because he realized that is nonsense he was talking when he said that Pantin gets assistance because he walks, when in fact Pantin gets the assistance because of the name of the Catholic Church, because of the fact that he hoi polloi or he fraternized with the leadership of the country. And there are those who, of course, who will be sympathetic to that person, or who would have taken on the responsibility of what? Of dealing with the downtrodden, the dispossessed, and those who would like to have a helping hand to make it in life. And of course, the conclusion has to be that Lennox Smith and, of course, the other institutions and other individuals that are doing similar work, as Bishop Burke, as I said last time, these late Horace Raymond and others, part of the community, seeing the problem, and decide to do something about it, and get very little or no support from the relevant authority, including private sector. That is shameful. I've always made the case. I remember one time, the founder of CPOS, a fellow called, not Horace Raymond, a fellow called, his name is on the tip of my lips. I will get it during the course of the explanation or the anecdote that I will share with you. At the time, the office of the Ministry of Labor, and therefore the Minister of Labor, was at the Riverside Plaza. And the minister at the time was Eric Williams, not the late, what I consider to be founding father, but Eric Williams, the fellow who, of course, was charged eventually for something with the Dan Souk matter. Yeah. The gentleman and the founder of the CPOS complained to me in conversation that he's getting pressure from Eric Williams because he was the parliamentary representative for Port of Spain South. Just as the present one, who talks about Lennox Smith and others being interlopers. Imagine that. He living here. He don't come here regularly. He was given, of course, a platform or a chariot by the PNM because they believe that they dominate here politically, and the people so stupid they will always vote for them no matter what. And in other words, they give him a safe seat. He's from some other community. Well-to-do. The man who talks about, of course, he go ride bicycle to work, and he has a coal pot, and he will, of course, fry or roast breadfruit, all of that kind of hogwash. But taking big brief, $1 million brief. $1 million brief when the information, the statistics, the calculations would have reached the public We're talking about bicycle riding to work, etc. Well, of course, you must know that that is an insult that he was projecting to the population, and in particular the poor people. But he, of course, gets, and of course at the time, questionable briefs. Al-Rari was the Attorney General, and of course he was among many who get $1 million briefs. But talking about bicycle riding to school, riding to work, and breadfruit, and you still have a coal pot and all that kind of hogwash. Hogwash. I digress a little bit from the issue of Eric Williams, the predecessor to Scotland, who is now the current parliamentary representative for Port of Spain South. Because they are of the same, what I consider to be ilk. Same ilk. This contemptuous arrogance. So he says that I am an interloper. I have invaded Port of Spain South. Because he's hearing, of course, like everybody else. In fact, I want to tell you that a police officer in uniform came right in here and said that they were looking, of course, for the parliamentary representative's office, because they sent her for some back to school items. Of course, we still have back to school items here. We are collecting on a daily basis. But she came here because she was directed to the parliamentary representative office. And she came here. Now, what chance is that a person like that, a police officer, will mistake parliamentary representative office for an office which we have developed subsequent to the 28th of April? What is the likelihood of that? That being a mistake. I want to tell you what transpired really. Because of the amount of people that come here on a daily basis, and of course the natural information, even if she didn't know exactly where the address is, but if once she's coming around East Port of Spain, Charlotte Street, George Street, Nelson Street, Piccadilly Street, Duncan Street, because this office is known more than any other office of the type that serves the people, it's only natural that if she was either sought information, the person would tell them come here, will tell her come here. And if she's on her own volition and she would have been passing here on a regular basis, she would have naturally be guided to come here because of the level of activity. In fact, I want to tell you that these young people who you see we are providing, of course, free internet for, they're outside there right now, and of course they come close to the building and so on, and they download and they entertain themselves, etc. Free internet. You know what one of them told me the other day? He said, Mr. Smith, it's the first time we see so much people walking up George Street. So much people. That don't happen. Of course, it happens on Charlotte Street, but certainly not on George Street. And of course, they confess that it's here they are coming. So you understand that the predicament of the police officer who, of course, mistakenly came here at our facility at 55 George Street, mistakenly thinking that she is in the office of, as a lady constable, of the parliamentary representative. So to talk about interloper and all that kind of nonsense, only to try to hoodwink and to deceive. What I would expect, and I am prepared to do it, I expect that there will be a cooperative agenda between ourselves and the parliamentary representative so that we can coalesce our resources so as to make the place better. But I have seen too much to know that that is wishful thinking. Because I saw after Carnival exercise on the greens where he was the center of attraction. Say who to do this and say who to do, and of course he eating almost everything. And of course, at one time after he made the interloper statement, I had to say that he have a face like a swordfish, a very long mouth. And if you see how he dipped into, I think it might have been pulori that he was at the source. He was sucking. You could have swear the man's mouth is a hose. Yes, man's mouth is a hose. Yes, that's how long and how the sucking process appear. But enough of that. Let me get back to, of course, Eric Williams, the then parliamentary representative for Port of Spain South. And the gentleman name is Morgan, the late Morgan, yes, Morgan is his name. Or what's his name? He died recently, not too long ago. So he intimated to me, because there are a number of other injustices that he brought to my attention in these parts. Like, take for instance, Midtown Carnival Committee doesn't really comprise of people of the area, and worse yet, there is a distinct usurping, and then of course false authorization, or put another way, people arrogate unto themselves an authority. Because remember, on the greens, that is where Carnival starts, because Cambule is reenacted there, and then of course marking the formal start of Carnival. Every year, that will be the subject of another program, because why that is the case, the businessmen and so on around here, they may benefit from that exercise, but comparatively speaking to when the Merry Monarch reigns, I'm talking about Monday and Tuesday, Carnival Monday and Tuesday, man, is only those persons west of Port of Spain, in the St. James, in the Woodbrook, on the avenue. They are the ones laughing all the way to the bank on Ash Wednesday morning as business people. Whilst of course where the mass would have originated, where the genesis of Carnival would have been nurtured and blossomed into what it is today, they're crying all the way back into their little patronized businesses. Even if they would have made investments on credit, some of the hawkers and some of the makeshift, what I consider to be tents and so on, lining the streets, Piccadilly Street, Prince Street, Duncan Street, Nelson Street, nothing. And I spoke to those young people, I told them it's all you creating the problem. Or put another way. They are using all you as the excuse for the problem. Why? I have been at several National Carnival Commission's meetings, and the refrain, the regurgitation is always that, Mr. Smith, you could You could solve the problem of those young people raiding and, of course, robbing and violence and so on. And that is why people don't want to come around here in order to, of course, enjoy the mass or play their mass. But yet still, before Carnival becomes and projects the Merry Monarch on Monday and Tuesday, Cambule is celebrated right round here. So there is a mismatch. And of course, as what I consider to be social engineers, yeah, we have to do some social engineering. Social engineering. And I remember very distinctly one lecturer told me in order to listen. There is something called psychological and social capital. Social and psychological capital refers to money, investment that you make to keep the peace. That's a slightly separate issue, but the fact is that I want you to understand that there are mechanisms and there are processes, protocols, initiatives that can be taken when you look at the overall intent to at least augment the commercial and economic advancement of East Port of Spain. There are businessmen who said that they will remain. Not that some of them, if they get a chance, of course, they will get out. But some of them are genuinely committed to the area. There are others who would say, well, listen, I'm here to do business. I can't do business here, so I go on. And many have, of course, done that, taken that route. The fact of the matter is that something has to be done. It cannot be that on the one hand, they are so creative and inventive, whether it be calypso, steel pan, mass, etc. And on the other hand, the same area where these things of Port of Spain, where these things have been created, they cannot benefit from the economic, social, and cultural advancement as it migrates to the western side of Port of Spain and leaving, of course, the eastern side of Port of Spain bare, dry, and without, of course, the benefits of the inventiveness and creativity that has caused the national community to enjoy in this melting pot scenario that in this case Carnival presents. Everybody enjoys Carnival. Not everybody enjoys Diwali, not everybody enjoys Emancipation, not everybody enjoys even Christmas, but certainly everybody enjoys Carnival. One way or another, those who don't, well, of course, they find their camps and so on. Carnival caused that. Carnival caused that indirectly, because they recognize Carnival. They don't go to camp for Christmas and so on. And at any rate, everybody doesn't recognize it. It's a true national festival that has created, of course, the melting pot that Trinidad and Tobago has become famous for. It's cross-cultural, it is multi-ethnic, it is multi-cultural, it is shades of various heritages, if there's such a word. Heritages, yes, heritages that has made Trinidad and Tobago the melting pot, the socio-economic and psycho-cultural melting pot that it is today. So let me get back, of course, to Eric Williams and that scenario with Morgan. So Morgan didn't tell me to do it, but I thought I was obligated because, I mean, these people have been misguided. They come into government with their own notion that the area is so damn worthless that that all they are good for is to be, what I often tell my colleagues, they see us as political not baggage at all, not political baggage. But these political opportunists see us as a place where you can create a voter bank, full stop. Voter bank, full stop. And that is why they would pay attention for the purpose of their electability and eventual elections. And after that, what they do, because they will tell you they did, what they do is minuscule, infinitesimally insignificant, having regard to what they would have gained as a result of keeping, or put another way, not keeping their promises that they would have, of course, espoused during the course of any campaign. And they do so because they have a hole in the face, I like to say. That's all. Call a mouth. Because it doesn't equate. There is no creativity. There is no social intervention that will suggest, or there is none on their own volition, or encompass or encourage or embrace the social engineering skills of those who would have been living there. And too often, many of those who claim to have this skill are really persons who attach themselves to the PNM, and therefore they become complacent, and that will to generate the paradigm shift and the attitudinal changes continue to suffice, simply because they believe that they are helpless and it is a hopeless cause, because Balize House dictate the pace, and all they want them to do is to contribute to that voter bank where they can get sufficient through the Westminster system in order to remain a parliamentary representative for the Spring South, the Laventils, East, West, of course, and other surrounding constituencies. Yeah, that is reality. So Morgan was an issue that I raised with Eric Williams. And I told him, I heard that you have been castigating Morgan. You say that he's a scamp, he's a thief, he's a scoundrel, and that, of course, he goes around to the various institutions, private or public, and begging for resources to ostensibly to help those persons that are in a state of abject need. In and around, of course, Besson Street and St. Paul Street and so on, that is where what I consider to be his catchment area is, a sphere of influence. So I told Eric Williams that. And I told him that I understand as well that you have made a commitment that you will write to every one of these institutions and say, don't give Morgan anything. And then he turned to me and said, yes. And of course, he regurgitated what I heard and confirmed that he sees Morgan as a scamp, as a no good, as an exploiter, etc., etc. Yeah. I listened to him and then I responded. I told Eric Williams, the then parliamentary representative for Port-au-Prince South, that you are making a fatalistic mistake. One, well, of course, by that time he would be very curious as to why would I say something like that. I appear to be a fairly intelligent person. He would have known me long before. That is why he would have given me that meeting in terms of my activism in the general Lavatel, East Port-au-Spain and environs Bova community. You're making a fatalistic mistake. I said, let me tell you this. And I gave him the example of 12 loaves of bread. 12 loaves. I said, listen. After, of course, I made him understand that it is not easy in a community like this to establish an institution called CPOS. Whether, indeed, of course, I'm reflecting, of course, MLIO. I'm reflecting love. I'm reflecting, of course, the ad hoc committee for the eradication of crime. I'm reflecting, of course, Barbara Grayberg's children's home. I'm reflecting as well, of course, Penny's, not Penny Beckles, you know. Penny's Street Children's program. Listra Penny I'm talking about. I said, it is sleepless nights. It is a vision. Sometimes it is sacred. At all times, I should say, it is sacred. It is love for the people that will have motivated these people to create these institutions to assist their fellow men who, or put another way, they too are in abject need as well. They working anywhere. They have to eat as well. But at the same time, they are looking for the least among them. And he couldn't understand what I was saying. Because there is a school of thought that say, if it is, that you take up that responsibility, then drop it, discontinue it. If you can't carry on, I'll explain that in more details later. Drop it, get rid of it, because you can't carry it on. So we're taking it on for. And then I told him, using the analogy of 12 loaves of bread, whether it's hops bread or butter bread or otherwise. I said, listen, if Morgan gets 12 loaves of bread, and let us say for argument's sake, he takes 10 for himself. You know what I say? I told Eric Williams that if Morgan was getting 12 loaves of bread and he take 10 for himself, you can't want anything much more what I consider to be unfair than that, more disproportionate than that. So he's listening, and he takes the remaining 2 loaves and gives somebody else those 2 loaves. Up to that point in time, he don't know where I'm going. And then I told him, I said, what you would have done by your actions, by of course writing all of these institutions, saying not to give Morgan anything, and targeting Morgan, you would have at minimum, let me say it again, you would have at minimum prevented two persons, usually in dire need, in the community of getting those 2 extra loaves of bread. You know what I say? I told him that he would have at minimum prevented 2 persons who may be in dire need, abject need. Because Morgan and they and people like me will know who are they who are in dire need. So even though he take 10 for himself of the 12, and he give 2, that's 2 persons that would have gotten 2 loaves of bread. But when you do what you did or propose to do, nobody gets anything. You kill Morgan, not literally. You kill Morgan. You kill the potential for getting 2 persons getting 2 loaves of bread, etc. And he started to think, well, I didn't finish there. I said, what I expect you to do as the parliamentary representative, Eric Williams, knowing what you know and believing in what you know or got through the grapevine or indirectly, you have the power to approach Morgan and tell Morgan, listen, this is what I heard, or this is the situation. Call him in the office, just as how I came to you. This is the situation. I am prepared to help because I know that you would not have taken all for yourself, but you have a disproportionate amount that you are taking for yourself from the information I have, and we have to find a transparent way, at the same time helping, because your institution is playing a role in the society. Remember that if you take it away all entirely, at least 2 persons will not get a blasted bread. Understand that? I'm not talking here ad hominem or by guess. When Archbishop Barbara Grace Burke's children's home was closed down, when Listra Penny, that is, street children home was closed down, the vacuum that would have been left is imaginable and cannot be easily filled. And as these institutions face the reality of those who ought to be assisting, but instead they attack and they decry and they malign and promote, of course, those persons who have had access to them because of their socio-economic standing in the community, like the Pantins and so on, and the stupid talk of Umbala. You understand the problem. Well, I want to tell you, and if there are politicians listening, I want to tell all you too, in government, out of government, that disproportionate, asinine, illogical, incongruent positioning has contributed to the socio-economic and psycho-cultural quagmire that Trinidad and Tobago over time has found itself in today. And there's nothing the police could do about it. They might be able to catch a couple. They might be able by overwhelming presence. But the thought pattern is there. And once you cannot sustain your onslaught, what you go do? You go kill out all of the gangsters at the risk of Trinidad and Tobago being blacklisted internationally. Can't. can't. You are making a fatalistic mistake if you do not, of course, pull down your pride, divest yourself of the arrogance and hubris that state and private sector, including the banks and financial institutions, have about themselves, and believe that, of course, big is best, and that of course, associating with persons who don't need it, who can do without it, but are accomplished persons in association with the upper echelons of the society. They live in, of course, in Goodwood Park and other well-to-do communities in the country, but come into these communities and say, well, I'm a good Samaritan and I'm altruistic, etc., etc. Yes. Without paying attention to those who and themselves are in need, but at the same time are helping others, and you don't see that that is a greater investment relating to, of course, the concept of social and psychological capital. You do not see that the thing is unraveling before our very eyes over time. I could tell you when this situation with guns, cocaine, marijuana, block raids, and gangsterism started. It was just around 2005 with the King's brothers who commandeered a property in what we call Paris Boulevard, just off or betwixt Laventil and Mover. I can tell you. I know of when, of course, persons in Muslim garbs were raiding blocks all over the place and creating havoc as they impose their WAP principle, saying that they are pursuing some holy mission, but you don't know the things that they collect, who it going to or where it gone. And eventually, of course, we knew the Commission of Inquiry into the 1990 coup told us, if you would have studied it. The delinquency and the abdication of the responsibility are talking about, of course, whether it be the Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Social Development, today, of course, Ministry of the People and Social Development, whether it be the Office of the Prime Minister, whether it be the Ministry of Agriculture, whether it be the Ministry of Health, whether it be the Ministry of Education, all of them. And this concept about all of government approach, let me tell you this. This concept of all of government's approach is merely a softening and, of course, a palatable for acceptability disposition. It sounds nice in other words, but really and truly there is no all of government approach, because there is no coordination, everybody acting in their own sphere of interest. No serious coordination so as to impact, firstly, from a prophylactic perspective, meaning that to prevent, and from, of course, a remedial perspective in terms of those who would have been engaged can be rehabilitated. And therefore, the promotion of an attitudinal change and a paradigm shift rather than the paradigm paralysis that we have have been engulfed in, particularly in recent times. I have made the point, and I have been very critical of Dr. Rowley as Prime Minister. And maybe people didn't understand the direction in which I was going under the all-embracive, under the long-term, under the foresightedness in such a analysis. So let me tell you, so we put it in perspective and put it to rest once and for all. He can't do anybody anything now. Everybody could do him something. Doesn't have the power, again, that he abused up and down the country. I've often criticized Dr. Rowley for hosting, well, not for hosting his annual charity tournament, golf tournament. I've not criticized him for that. What I've criticized him for is the distribution and the use of the proceeds of that exercise. Let me repeat. This is me. He's free to have any kind of fundraiser. If he chooses to have it via the golf, no problem. But as Prime Minister, he chose to take the funds that would have been acquired, the proceeds that would have been manifested, and give it to vision and a mission. Now you may say, well, what is wrong in that? With that, why Smith will be offended by vision and mission getting the proceeds from a charity hosted by the Prime Minister. Notice the operating word is the Prime Minister. The answer to that is very simple. As Prime Minister, you cannot, it is impossible, even though of course it has manifested itself with this Prime Minister, to show a bias that does not parallel, does not equate to the overall national good on a particular subject. What do I mean? I'm talking about crime and criminality, because Vision and Mission is a contributor to addressing, of course, the crime situation in the country. So, by itself, Vision and Mission is a credible and worthy organization to get assistance. Not so? Yeah. But as Prime Minister, you ought to know that in order for Vision and Ambition to succeed, or put another way, to execute its mandate of assisting former prisoners, former incarcerated individuals, they must first go through prison. They must first go through prison, people. How the hell, as Prime Minister, you would want to support solely with your charity benefits an organization whose raison d'etre, whose reason for existing, whose core function is to further assist, whether rehabilitated or not when they make their prison term, that is irrelevant, but to assist these people. While as Prime Minister, you don't understand that you, at minimum, you also have to assist an organization, it doesn't matter what organization, that prevents people from going into prison. You must. You're Prime Minister. How could you solely and significantly have a charity that says, I am going to be supporting an organization where people have to go through prison first, and after that, that charity will pick up the pieces and rehabilitate, or should I say, further rehabilitate and tag them along. No. By that gesture, you are saying, as far as I am concerned, that you are supporting people going to prison. And my argument has been that I don't mind you're supporting vision and mission, but you have to also support, as Prime Minister, another organization that prevents people from going into prison. And therefore, the prophylactic approach obviously is the better approach. And therefore, as Prime Minister, being the embodiment of what is desirous in the society, that is best for the society, would have been achieved in that dual or that bifurcated approach. Support an organization that says, go to school, do well. Whether it's in athletics, whether it be culture, whether it be education, whether it be remedial work, etc. You do that. Get part of the charity, the proceeds of it to go to an organization that prevents people from going into prison. And therefore, in such circumstance, I would accept the presence or the focus on vision and a mission, since, of course, its core function is to, of course, look at persons who would have gone through prison and how they adapt and adjust in the society. Common sense. But no, you understand why one will have an anathema for that Prime Minister. Because it's stupid. It is asinine. It is not just, you can't tell the man what to do with the money. You were Prime Minister. And you cannot symbolize, you cannot suggest, you can't infer that you like people who go through prison and then get further assistance as to people who preventing people from going into prison. Which one is more superior? Now we're talking. You understand my concern, deep concern. And I'm glad that it's happy riddance for this poor exemplar from a Trinidad and Tobago nationalistic, socio-psychological, motivational perspective. Nobody takes you on if you do that. Why would you want to do that? And I've been talking, and I don't know if his tournament still exists. But even now, he has an opportunity to change that pattern, mix it. Support an organization that prevents people from going into prison. And even though your favorite organization is Vision and Mission for one reason or another, nobody can tell you how to spend your money. But do that because it's the symbolism is not right. It doesn't send the right message. Doesn't send the right message. How the hell you can only support an organization where people have to go into prison first before they could get help? You have to be out of this world. You have to be not accurate, not knowledgeable of the realities of Trinidad and Tobago to be a Prime Minister and engage in such what I consider to be reckless behavior. Reckless, quite apart from the others. So, the point I am making with respect, of course, to Eric Williams, and he understood, get involved. I have been subjected to those kinds of what I consider to be ill-informed persons like Hines and they will say, well, Smith, look, doing this because He wanted to get rich. I wonder what he did by, of course, being a fake and false minister. I wonder where he living. I hear that, of course, he make WhatsApp provide him with 24/7 water supply at the expense, or should I say, and neglected his surrounding neighborhood. That's what I hear. I'm not saying that it is in fact so, but I wouldn't put it beyond him to be that stupid. Yeah, I would be that. Because if he could say that I will get rich and suggested somehow I'm exploiting the poor people and all that kind of thing, I myself poor. Understand where I'm coming from? So we have to have a serious conversation, and this platform is the platform that will, of course, facilitate that. We have a lot of work to do. We have the right government in place that will listen, and we need, of course, to move expeditiously towards addressing these problems. Let me just conclude by saying that we will be having, of course, as I said, we have concluded that we'll have the school leaving exam being done for both adults and young people. Those out of school, so that's an out of school category. Those who believe that they could go a little more advanced, we will have at least, we'll do 2 CXC subjects, one of which will be English. We will decide which one is much more, should I say, a low-hanging fruit to inculcate, and then, of course, after that, we leave them on their own. You will see them, of course, wanting to do other exams, so wanting, of course, to become more ambitious, wanting, of course, I walk in with my certificate, I have a certificate, and so on, so look, I've got no style on me, and so on and so forth. Of course, within reason and within limit, but you have to have a starting point. And then, of course, we will have, as a generic program, computer literacy. So I am calling on those suppliers of computers, whether they are old computers, or whether a little repair will, of course, cause them to function. We are asking because we will be accommodating them. So apart from the school leaving component, we will allow the adults to get on a computer and become familiar with it. That's a technology, IT technology, everybody in Trinidad and Tobago must be. We have already, of course, taken the first step by providing Wi-Fi internet free of charge to the entire immediate community. If you go outside now, it's after 9, you will see them. You see what's that? Oh, it's 9:52. People, I trust that tonight was also very, very informative. I see we didn't get any call. Oh, my phone was off. My phone was off. Sorry about that. Sorry for that, people. Sorry for that. But I came late, and therefore, you can't be thinking about everything. I'm sure that there would have been calls. But I trust that you are better informed as to the direction we're going. And I want to say, I will be making some overtures from time to time with those persons who have the skills in English, in whatever other subject that we would have identified, or just by supervising, just by mentoring, just by giving some good advice, because you would have made it already, and you want to tell people avoid these pitfalls as opposed to other issues associated with or different from. Yeah, we have to do it, people. And I'm expecting that the good-hearted Trinbagonians will follow suit. Don't study me. Everybody knows that, ministerial material, what? Chairmanship material, any board, doesn't matter. I can tell you something. I will refuse, and I know my colleagues, immediate and otherwise, have scolded me for that, but I will refuse. And I will promote at the same time persons who I believe can meet the standard that is required in circumstances where I would refuse an opportunity because I know what I want. And I have said to the Prime Minister already what I want. If it doesn't materialize, she and I knows, I continue to work. I continue to work. I believe, of course, in the concept that the stone the builder rejects eventually becomes the cornerstone, because I believe in what I am doing. There is no other greater mission than to treat with the downtrodden, those who may be engaged and or about to be or have the potential to engage in crime and criminality. There is no greater ambition to directly address by way of reduction, by way of programs, gravitation to crime and criminality and gang warfare, borderline issues, etc., etc. And that is why we have these young people. Prevent them from gravitating, because one of the factors, one of the features, one of the elements that these miscreants use is to glamorize crime, glamorize involvement in a gang. And the fascinated young person, they want to be, and they are motivated, and then they go and do something worse than the established ones do. And then, of course, we in the community, the wider community, feel the pain. Young fella like that, young girl like that. What is happening here? We have to put a stop to it. Incrementally, and places where it is rampant, as in East Port of Spain, Lavatil, Beetham, Sealers, and so on, we have a duty to, of course, engage. Have a wonderful rest of tonight. God bless. Don't forget, of course, that tomorrow morning, I wasn't there this morning. As I said, I went to Tobago. So I will be on tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, from 6 o'clock on the ground report. Have a wonderful one, and God bless. Yes, let's see if we could talk about crying in the ghetto.
The sun rises slowly over the hills. Everywhere is cold and sunlight, but still, most lights with hotels are crowded. There days where dark clouds are shrouded. They don't smile and they never will. Only volunteers get the fill. Empty promises is what they hear. No running water from year to year. Hearts that no one desire. That if there is a Messiah, someday he hear their whispered prayer. Covered always bare and scanty. 10 people in a one-bedroom shanty. Forced to sell on the pavement. No vacancy, no employment. Cattle firecracker from gunshot. Blood does flow when things get hot. Afraid to look out the window to hear voices from the ghetto. Crying, 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 Lord, Lord, crying, crying. Voices from the ghetto. Crying, 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 Lord, Lord, crying. Voices from the ghetto. Help us, Father. Oh, Lord. Mothers does just hold their head.